It started like any other weekend morning in the quiet suburban neighborhood of Maple Grove. The sun was barely up, the air smelled of wet grass, and the peaceful silence was broken only by the occasional hum of a passing car. For most people, it was a calm start to the day. But for me, peace had become a rare luxury ever since Karen moved in next door. Karen wasn't just a nosy neighbor, she was the self-proclaimed queen of the cul-de-sac, a self-appointed enforcer of neighborhood order. She had opinions about everything: where people parked, how long lawns should be, and even the color of someone's mailbox. And for reasons I never quite understood, I had become her favorite target. It all began when she tried to ticket me for parking my patrol car in front of my own driveway. She had no idea I was an off-duty police officer, and she went on a rampage about law enforcement pretending to be special. I ignored her for the most part, but the resentment in her eyes never faded. Every time she saw me, it was as if she was waiting for a chance to get even. Over the next few weeks, she escalated her antics. She filed noise complaints about my car doors closing too loudly. She took photos of my property and posted them in the neighborhood Facebook group, accusing me of misusing police privileges. But I never reacted. I had dealt with tougher people than her in my line of work. Still, I knew that when someone like Karen felt ignored, they didn't calm down, they got creative. One afternoon, I was working on my porch, fixing a loose railing when I noticed her standing on her lawn, pacing with her phone in hand. She kept glancing toward my house, whispering into the receiver with exaggerated expressions. Her lips formed words like dangerous, uniform, and arrest. I frowned but didn't move. After a few minutes, she hung up and smirked. Something was brewing, and I could feel it. An hour later, I heard sirens, not the kind I recognized from my department, but a cheap imitation. The sound was off, the pitch artificial. A white sedan rolled up, unmarked and without plates, yet flashing fake red and blue lights on the dash. Two men stepped out, dressed in mismatched police uniforms that looked like they were bought from a costume store. They wore badges clipped to their belts but no department insignia, and their holsters hung awkwardly at their sides. Karen came marching behind them, her arms crossed, her lips twisted into a triumphant grin. She pointed straight at me, standing calmly on my porch. From her expression, you'd think she had just solved a major crime. The officers looked uncertain, but she barked orders at them like she owned the station. It didn't take me long to understand what was happening. She had actually hired or convinced these fake cops to come and arrest me, likely to embarrass me in front of the neighborhood. Maybe she thought I'd panic, or maybe she wanted to record me resisting arrest for her social media crusade. I stood still, watching as the men approached. They looked nervous, clearly not professionals. The way they scanned the area, avoiding eye contact, made it obvious they were out of their depth. I didn't want to make a scene, but the situation was spiraling fast. Neighbors started peeking from behind curtains, phones ready to record. Karen began loudly announcing that she had finally caught the lawbreaker, claiming I was impersonating an officer and threatening the neighborhood. The irony almost made me laugh. She had no idea that the man she was trying to humiliate was an actual member of the police force, someone who had spent years upholding the very laws she was pretending to understand. Inside my chest, my training kicked in. I kept my stance calm, my breathing even, and my voice steady. I knew I had to play this smart. Exposing her and those fake cops would be easy, but I wanted to do it right, legally, cleanly, and in a way that would leave no room for her to twist the truth later. As the fake officers started to approach my porch, one of them hesitated and asked Karen for confirmation paperwork. She snapped at him, saying she didn't need it. That was all I needed to hear. Without moving a step, I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my badge, the real one, gleaming under the afternoon sun. The look on Karen's face was priceless. For a split second, her confidence shattered. Her eyes widened, her posture stiffened, and her mouth opened slightly in disbelief. She tried to speak, but no words came out. The fake officers froze, unsure of what to do. I could see panic in their eyes now. They knew they were in serious trouble. I took a slow step forward, my expression calm but firm. The neighbors were whispering among themselves now, phones still recording. The whole neighborhood had gathered to witness the downfall of the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Grove. Karen's smirk was gone, replaced by fear and confusion. Her plan had backfired in the worst possible way. And as she tried to justify herself, stumbling over her words, I knew this was far from over. There was more to uncover: who these men really were, how she found them, and how deep her obsession with me had gone. This wasn't just a petty neighborhood dispute anymore. It had crossed into something criminal. And I was about to handle it exactly by the book. As I reached for my radio and called for backup, Karen took a step back, realizing what she had done. Her eyes darted between me and the fake officers, who were already trying to retreat. But it was too late. The real law was on its way. The quiet street of Maple Grove was no longer peaceful. The stage was set for a showdown that no one in the neighborhood would ever forget. The sound of my radio crackled through the tense air, a sharp contrast to the artificial sirens still flickering weakly from the fake patrol car. As I called for backup, the imposters froze, realizing this was no longer a joke. Their fake authority had just run headfirst into the real thing. Karen's confidence was gone. She stood rigid, eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. The smug smile she wore moments ago had evaporated, leaving only the faint tremor of panic on her lips. For the first time since she moved into Maple Grove, she wasn't in control. The fake officers exchanged nervous glances. One of them, a tall man with an unkempt beard, subtly shifted his stance, inching backward toward their car. The other tried to play it cool, his hand twitching near the toy badge clipped to his belt. They were amateurs, and now they knew they were in over their heads. Within minutes, I heard the distant wail of real sirens, deep, commanding, and unmistakable. The kind that made people step aside and straighten up. As the sound grew louder, the fake cops stiffened, like deer caught in headlights. The sedan lights flashed red and blue across the neighborhood, and the residents who had gathered began whispering excitedly. The real police cruisers pulled up in formation, blocking the street from both ends. Officers stepped out with measured precision, calm, focused, authoritative. They took one look at the fake cops, at the phony badges and the terrified expressions, and immediately understood that something bizarre was happening. Karen's voice cracked as she tried to explain herself. She stumbled over her words, insisting she had just called the police, that she didn't know these men personally. But it was too late. Everything was on camera. The neighbors' phones had captured every second. Her triumphant smirk, the fake sirens, her loud accusations. All of it. One of the real officers, Sergeant Daniels, approached me directly. We had worked together before. The instant he saw me in uniform, his eyebrows shot up in recognition. Then he turned to the fake cops. "Let's see your badges," he said sternly. The taller fake cop hesitated, his voice trembling. We left them in the car." Daniels wasn't having it. Within moments, the imposters were surrounded. Their fake badges, toy handcuffs, and plastic holsters were confiscated. Their car, with no registration, no plates, and a dashboard light bar that was literally duct-taped in place, was impounded on the spot. Karen tried to back away, muttering that she had no idea they weren't real. But one of the imposters broke down almost instantly, admitting that she had paid them. She had offered them cash to teach her neighbor a lesson. Apparently, she found them online through some shady security service advertisement. When that confession came out, the entire neighborhood gasped. Phones were still recording. Karen's face turned pale. Her carefully built reputation, her HOA watchdog image, shattered in a single moment. I stood quietly, arms crossed, as the real officers led the fake cops away in handcuffs. The same neighbors who once rolled their eyes at her constant complaints now stared in open disbelief. The woman who had lectured everyone about law and order had just orchestrated an actual crime. The sergeant turned to me, shaking his head slightly. "You handled this well," he said. I simply nodded. I wasn't interested in gloating, not yet. I wanted to make sure the whole truth came out. Karen was still pleading, her voice cracking between sobs and excuses. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted him to stop intimidating people." But the irony was almost poetic. I had never intimidated anyone. I had simply done my job, as a police officer and a neighbor. The only one who'd used intimidation, deceit, and manipulation was her. As the officers questioned her, she kept looking at me, eyes wide with disbelief and fear. It was clear she still couldn't fully process the situation, that the man she tried to humiliate, the man she had publicly accused of being a fraud, was the very officer now standing in front of her, watching justice unfold. Eventually, the real officers placed her under temporary detention for questioning. The charges would come later: false report, harassment, and conspiracy. The neighborhood slowly began to return to normal, but the echoes of what had happened would linger. Every time someone looked at Karen's now vacant driveway, they'd remember the day she crossed the line, the day she tried to outsmart the law and ended up facing it instead. A week later, I received the full report. Both fake cops were facing charges for impersonating law enforcement and unlawful detainment. Karen, on the other hand, was hit with community service hours, fines, and a restraining order to stay away from my property. When I returned home that evening, a few of the neighbors were waiting. They thanked me, not just for handling it professionally, but for finally standing up to the chaos she had brought into their lives. For the first time in months, Maple Grove felt peaceful again. As I stood on my porch, watching the sunset reflect off the quiet street, I realized something. People like Karen thrive on control. They believe they can manipulate anyone, twist the truth until it bends their way. But the moment they're faced with someone who won't play their game, someone who answers back with calm truth and authority, that's when they crumble. Karen had learned that lesson the hard way. In the end, I didn't need revenge. The law had done its job. And as the evening breeze brushed past, I smiled faintly, knowing that sometimes, justice doesn't need a fight. It just needs patience, and a badge that's real.